Thank you, Dr. Elizabeth Shirley. Thank you, Dr. Ashraf. Thank you, Sri Madhavan Nambiar. Thank you to all of you at the Kerala Blockchain Association, the Kerala Blockchain community, and the broader Kerala community. It is an honor to be here. I am only sad that I cannot be there in person to enjoy Kerala's fine weather and culture and food. I'm looking forward to being able to come there at some point in the not too distant future, because I would like to take advantage of all that and meet all of you. I'd like to give just a very quick kind of overview and keynote of where we're at with Hyperledger now. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Hopefully this will work. And can all of you see that? Is that live? I'll take that as a yes.
Yes, Brian.
Okay, great. Perfect. So why don't I jump right in? Many of you perhaps know who Hyperledger is and what we do, but I thought I would just start at the basics to make sure that we all had kind of common understanding of this. Hyperledger is an initiative homed at the Linux Foundation. We're all Linux Foundation employees, those of us who work on the core of the Hyperledger community. And like all Linux Foundation initiatives, it is a consortium of a number of two different layers, a consortium of software developers working together to build open source software. In this case, it's a software focused on distributed ledger technology, blockchain technology, and some of the pieces that combine with that. It's also a consortium of the companies and in some cases nonprofits and government agencies and others, but really mostly the companies that are building products and services on top of this technology, or some cases even just using these technologies. And this is really key, because our model is to figure out not only how do we help foster the development of open source software, but how do we make that a sustainable ecosystem, right? How do we really make sure it becomes the Linux of this space, right? And we think about that with all of the different initiatives that the Linux Foundation takes on. And in 5 years since we've launched, in fact, we will officially celebrate our 5th anniversary on December 17th, but we are certainly doing a series of celebrations leading up to that. We've really built a tremendous greenhouse, as we call it, of technologies. In fact, you'll see the greenhouse in full in just a bit, but across the different projects, over 16 different major initiatives, a number of these initiatives also in something called the Hyperledger Labs, which is kind of an, a place where we grow new projects and new ideas and new technologies. 4 of those releases have hit a 1.0 release, meaning they are in production. We have a very high bar for 1.0. Some companies will push out an inferior technology, call it 1.0, and very quickly move to 3.1 or 95 or whatever. But really, these are 4 technologies that are production ready and ready to deploy. And many of the others are libraries and tools and other things that get embedded inside of those different systems. We are a global community. We have members all over the world, members there in China, both corporate members and developers, in India, as well as members in China, members all over the Asia Pacific region, as well as in Europe and the United States, of course. And we don't just write software, we also try to organize the community around different working groups and special interest groups, and we'll describe that in a bit. Of a very active meetup community that reaches over 60,000 different participants over the course of a year. And those are just the inner core of what I believe is tens of thousands or more additional developers who are working with the technology and building it and implementing some really amazing things. So we have what we call the greenhouse. This is a set of independent technology initiatives, but all unified in a common open source license, which we use the Apache license, a common way of working, which is entirely in the public and designed to be done in a way that doesn't create a dependency upon a single developer or upon a single company to push things forward. Certainly, there are companies that invest quite a bit in making these platforms move forward, but we believe it's important for stability and resilience that each of these projects eventually have a collection of organizations sponsoring the development and moving them forward. Some of these projects are even competitive with each other. Perhaps you've heard of Hyperledger Fabric. It is the most widely used blockchain platform out there, but permission blockchain platform. But we also have technologies such as Hyperledger Iroha, which I'll mention in a bit, is used in a very important central bank digital currency initiative. Hyperledger Bezu, which is a Ethereum client. So it's a way of actually building permission blockchain systems using the Ethereum technology stack, the Solidity, smart contracts, for example, that sort of thing, in a permission setting, as well as to connecting it to the public blockchain, as well as Hyperledger Indy, which is really focused on distributed digital identity. I wish I had time to go into all the others. There's a lot of very distinct functionality available in them, but it really represents a portfolio of different technology packages that come together in some really important ways. Hyperledger has been adopted by really an amazing sweep of different organizations out there for a lot of different use cases, and I'll give some examples in a bit. But one of the ways of measuring this, so we don't run a central, kind of directory that tracks everybody's usage. This is open source software. Companies will often pull the code down from the site, get something running entirely on their own, and never let us know. They don't sign an agreement. They don't execute a contract. And you know what? We love that because it's open source software. People should be able to use it without registration or without paying a license fee or anything like that. But sometimes it makes it hard to keep tabs on who's using things. Sometimes we only find out when there's a news story, for example. And one of the news outlets that covers enterprise blockchain technology pretty thoroughly is Forbes. Every year they have a survey called the Forbes Blockchain 50, where they keep track of who out there is using this technology for real production purposes, and companies that are north of $1 billion in revenue per year, right? And so you can see that's a pretty heady mix of companies. Some that you would expect, of course, IBM and Amazon perhaps, and some you might not, such as Daimler or Dole, which is a food company, or Anthem, which is a healthcare company, Cargill, which is very much in the supply chain business, all sorts of banks, all sorts of really, grassroots, but like really substantive organizations in a lot of different fields. And it's really been amazing to build this commercial adoption through the community, because we know that will drive contribution and that commercial ecosystem that is really important to build on top. Another sign of adoption, in particular with Hyperledger Fabric, is that it has now been adopted and runs as a managed service across every major cloud in the world. And so this means not only AWS and Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure, but also the ones that are more kind of enterprise specific, like IBM, Oracle, SAP, and Salesforce, as well as the ones that are rooted there in the East, in China, for example, and financial, Huawei, Tencent Cloud, JD's Cloud, and this new one called the Blockchain Services Network, which is a really exciting kind of development, one that has a lot of official support from the Chinese government. So as a way to try to weave these together, and especially to cover use cases like supply chain traceability, which necessarily cross borders and span everywhere, this has been really, really great to see. So this adoption makes it easier to build these permission blockchain networks out of Hyperledger technology. We also launched about just over a year ago a program called the Hyperledger Certified Service Provider Program, which qualifies a subset of companies that can go out and competently provide products and services around Hyperledger Fabric initially, and soon others. And we base that a lot on a training and certification program that we've also introduced around Hyperledger Fabric and around Hyperledger Sawtooth, and soon to come Hyperledger Bezu, which is focused on helping train up what we hope will be an army, very complementary to KBA's desire to train up 20,000 developers and administrators around core blockchain technologies. We share that desire. We've built content to do that, and we built a certification program so that developers can prove to their future employers that they know what they're talking about when it comes to building and managing Hyperledger technologies. There's some really there's a bunch of different ways that people can get involved, even before you know how to code, right? Even before you really are invested in the community. But obviously the first way is to just start using the code in proofs of concept, in pilots, in research projects. Usage is something that has to drive a lot of this. It has to be meaningful. It has to be something that people need. We realize that. But once people start using it, they do start thinking thinking about how do I contribute back upstream to this project? I'm benefiting from it. I'm not required to contribute back up, but if I've got an idea or I've got a bug to fix or I've got something that I wish Fabric would do or I wish Bezu would do, it's really important for all of us to build this contributor pathway back upstream into the project. And so if you know how to code, one way to do that, every one of these projects within Hyperledger has a contributor guide that helps you understand what's the structure of the code and what are the right ways to submit a pull request, those sorts of things. They also have a bug database, typically using Jira or GitHub issues that can really drive that contribution. But we also really would benefit from contributions in the form of writing and translation. In fact, through partnership with KBA, we've been able to support core translations of Hyperledger Fabric into the languages there in India, and make that a core part of the documentation for Hyperledger Fabric, which I hopefully will really pay off and really help the community there. Even though I know many people speak English, it will be, I think, a way to even make it easier to adopt. And then finally, we can always use help in building the network, building the community through meetups, through special interest groups and working groups and the like. And in fact, in India, we've put together a chapter of our community focused on really meeting the needs of the Indian subcontinent and building the developer community and to some degree the commercial community there. You'll hear from one of them, Arun, who will be joining us on the panel a bit later. He's a senior software engineer with Walmart, as well as Kamlesh Nagwar, who's the VP of Blockchain Technologies for Snapper Future Tech. They lead this, but really it's a public effort, and there's a tremendous amount of interest there in India. In fact, from India, we have at least 20 core maintainers. We could have more. It's sometimes hard to tell where people are coming from. At least 20 maintainers and over 100 contributors across the Hyperledger and Hyperledger Labs projects, and a lot of contribution from other parts of the community. We have a very active mentorship program, internship program that we always have each year 4 or 5 or sometimes more participants from India picking up. The chair of the Telecom SIG is also from India and has some really good stories to tell about its adoption in the telecom sector in India. We also have Arun has joined the technical steering committee, and so really at the core of the technology community is representation from India, which is really great to see. And just in so many other ways, we see active involvement from the Indian subcontinent in Hyperledger. I know our time is short, so I want to make sure to get to some examples, but we have working groups within Hyperledger that really cover all of the key kind of horizontal technology and architecture and identity issues across the different projects. These are great ways to get involved if you have this cross-cutting concern about how these different things work. We also have special interest groups really focused on different industries and how those industries might use distributed ledger technology in general, but specifically Hyperledger technologies in healthcare, in telecom, in capital markets, in government purposes. That's what the public sector special interest group is focused on, as well as in social impact, of course, where we think blockchain technology is so critical for traceability in supply chains. Or in fact, we have another one focused specifically on climate action and accounting for use in trying to get to a cleaner environment through the use of a distributed ledger for tracking of emissions and those sorts of things. If for those developers, we have a key way to stay up to date each week, something called the Dev Weekly that we mail out to everybody, well, everyone who subscribes, that is, which covers recent developments in the different technology projects at a very low level. Incoming pull requests, different articles about some new feature being added here or there, some new training that's been put up, but really down deep in the code. So for those of you who are developers watching this, I strongly encourage you to check that out. I know that there's so much that we can cover in terms of how people are using this technology, and we'll touch on many of those use cases in the panel. Very quickly, I wanted to give some examples of from the region that I think will actually be significant. But there's a company based in Singapore called DLT Ledgers that has processed over $3 billion in trade finance through a network that they built sitting on top of Hyperledger Fabric. And this integrates the major bank in Singapore, DBS, as well as hundreds of other participants in digitizing, particularly agricultural product trade. So a tremendous amount of benefit from the deployment of that. Another major trade finance network that's more European-based that uses this is something called called We.Trade. They've seen a tremendous amount of adoption from really core European banks like HSBC, Deutsche Bank, KBC, Santander. Again, taking this old world process that involves coordinating not only between a buyer and a seller, but a buyer and seller's banks and global authorities and ports and shipping and all that kind of stuff, and releasing payment at just the right time, and taking that old kind of very paper-based and very manual set of processes and digitizing them, but in a way that crosses borders and still carries with it the trust that is essential to making these kinds of use cases work. Supply chain traceability, I've mentioned before, you've seen so many examples out there. One of the ones that we're really happiest about, really most excited about, and we've done a case study around on the Hyperledger website, is in traceability in conflict minerals that are used in batteries, right, in electric vehicles and others. There's a really keen desire to make sure that that supply chain is clean, that it does not involve the use of slave labor or other kind of questionable practices. And so Hyperledger Fabric is used as a distributed ledger for tracing of tracking devices and IoT and kind of sensors that tell you, where the product has been, where there's clean handoff from one party to another, so you can see that traceability and know what degree of confidence you have that it came from a known good source. And then a final example I'll give, there's even more, but the National Bank of Cambodia has built the world's first central bank digital currency on top of Hyperledger Iroha. And it's the first retail payment system in the world that on the underpinning is blockchain technology. It doesn't look like Bitcoin. It doesn't look like Ethereum. It looks like you have an app and here's your account at a bank and you want to send money to somebody else in Cambodia digitally. You can do that if they're a member of any of the 7 or 8 major banks that are all participants in this network. And it's really helped establish, I think, not just a proof of concept, but a production system that demonstrates that retail central bank digital currencies are actually feasible. It's Cambodia. It'll be interesting to see how that applies to India or the United States, of course. But it's tremendously exciting and sees a tremendous amount of throughput every day. So really cool to see. We'll have a representative from Chainyard joining us on the panel. So more to talk about there in their use of something called Trust Your Supplier, which is a pretty exciting use case, and especially when I was pressed into service in the during this recent pandemic for the sourcing of personal protective equipment and that sort of thing. So a lot more to hear about there. And then finally, we've got our own kind of networking event in 1 week on the actual day of the celebration of our 5th anniversary. We'd welcome everyone to join. We'll send out more information about this to everyone who's here, but I would really love to have all of you join us. And I will just end with this slide. My colleagues, Julian Gordon and Dorothy Chang, who are based in Hong Kong, help us manage the entirety of the Asia Pacific region. And Julian is here as an attendee. I believe he'll be helping out with the panel as well. And we've many resources here for the Indian subcontinent in particular, but also the broader region that we'd like to bring to bear. So really excited to tell you more about what's going on in Hyperledger and bring you into all of our processes. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give you that high level view. There's so much so many exciting things going on in the world of enterprise blockchain generally, but specifically in Hyperledger. And I would love to have you join us.